What do you do when you do philosophy? Hi, Dr. Lee here, and in this video, I want to go over some of the tasks of philosophy and what philosophy is all about. First, when it comes to philosophy, we're talking about prescriptive and not merely descriptive measures. I could describe to you the things that I did yesterday. There are probably some things that I did yesterday that I probably shouldn't have. There might be things I never got around to yesterday that I probably should have. That's the difference between describing and prescribing. When we're talking about prescriptive measures, we're talking about the language of should and ought. Well, how do we arrive at these prescriptive measures is through arguments. Arguments is pretty much the bread and butter of philosophy. An argument is simply a collection of premises that are valid and sound that build to a justified conclusion. So, there's a difference between a belief and an argument. I may believe that all dogs go to heaven. Well, why do I get to believe this? What are the reasons for this belief? I might say, in building my argument for this belief, that all dogs have souls. But by that alone, I still can't have the conclusion that all dogs go to heaven. So I might also add that all souls go to heaven. Now, when I combine those two, I have a conclusion that all dogs go to heaven. So again, an argument is a collection of premises that build to a justified conclusion. My first premise is that all dogs have souls. My second premise is that all souls go to heaven. When I combine those two premises, I have the conclusion that all dogs go to heaven. But you might be asking, I understand the logic of that argument, but there's a couple issues with that. And that brings us to the task of philosophy. You might be asking, well, what is a soul? Do souls exist? Do dogs have souls? And that's a process of analysis. When we draw distinctions, when we try to understand what we might mean by things like a soul or the existence of heaven, or whether heaven exists but only good souls go to heaven. That's all the process of analysis and drawing distinctions. Now that we have these distinctions, and now that we have come to understand what these terms are, we have to bring them together. And that's the process of synthesis, the second task of philosophy. In synthesis, we're building arguments. We're taking premise number one, combining it with premise number two, perhaps for other premises as well, and we're building an argument and with synthesis and bringing them together. And then finally is the process of dialectic. This is where we test out our arguments. Just like a scientist has experiments and tests and makes tests. Same thing with philosophy. In dialectics, we test our arguments, see if they stand up, see what are some of the ramifications of these arguments, see if they're valid, etc., etc. So, philosophy is often said to be described as a process or an activity. Philosophy may not necessarily bring us to a fixed, concrete conclusion. Nonetheless, the activity of philosophy or the process of philosophy is fruitful for understanding our world and ourselves. Another way to think about it is with the concept of wonder. When we wonder about things, when we wonder about reality, we again may not come to a fixed conclusion. Nonetheless, wonder is beneficial. Think about life without a sense of wonder. What kind of life would that be? Just wondering about ourselves, wondering about reality, wondering about this world is a beneficial process in and of itself. And that's what philosophy does for us. So I hope this was helpful in explaining some of the things of what philosophy is and what it's not. Let me know what you think and come back for future videos.